Hello, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a slightly different view than you've seen. This is actually my living room. It's still a little echoey, so I'm sorry, but it's really echoey in my studio. I need to get some sound panels up at some point. But yeah, so I'm gonna go through 5 different supplies that I would recommend for beginners. Now, these are not all supplies, or all of the supplies that I use. I do use a pretty decent array and range of supplies. A lot of the supplies that I like to use are supplies you can get off Amazon or at Michael's, Joann Fabrics. I know they're more of like a craft and hobby place, but they do have decent supplies there as well. Yeah, so anything that I have links for, I will mention. They might be affiliate links, so if you see that and you purchase it, I could get a cut of the commission if you decide to do that. So, disclaimer out of the way. First thing I want to start with is paint. Now, there's a couple of different options when it comes to beginner paint, and I wish that I knew about this when I first started painting, and that is, you see me use it a lot, honestly, gouache. I did not know that this existed. It is amazing paint. You can get it in all kinds of different brands. You can get, I'll put a picture here of the Himi Gouache palettes. I've used them before. I've used a couple of different ones. I actually would really like to get a new one. The one I had ended up growing mold. You have to use the right kind of sprays to keep the paint wet. If you use regular water, it's fine, but if you let it sit for too long, it will grow mold because regular water does have bacteria. The special sprays that they use, I actually bought a full spray bottle of it, and then when I moved here, I opened it up and realized it was pretty much done for. I wasn't even gonna try and scrape the mold off. It was gross. So I'm gonna buy a new palette at some point, but the Holbein Acrylic Gouache, Acrylic. You can also look up Acrylic Gouache and it'll pull up the same paint. I don't know what the difference between that and this is, but this is such great paint for beginners. You can thin it out and use it more like a watercolor that's a bit more opaque. This is another brand, Arteza. You can get, I have like a whole bunch of colors and stuff. I usually recommend, if you're a beginner, to try and buy just the primary colors. If you get the primary colors, then you can mix and make any color you want. It does take some practice and some time, but I honestly feel like I get truer colors to what I'm looking for and what I'm wanting in the paintings I have when I do it that way. But you can just buy the whole set if it's easier for you to just buy a green, get a green, get a whole set. I think I got a set of 24. I think I probably have used up quite a few of these. My white's almost empty actually. So I do have a link for that below if you want to get that, as well as my Holbein Acrylic Gouache. So gouache, I would absolutely recommend. It's very versatile. You can layer it. You can use it really on any kind of surface. It's a paint that I wish that I could have started out with as an artist. So the second supply that I would recommend for beginners is all medium paint brushes. I don't like watercolor brushes. They are too thin. Even for watercolor, they tend to kind of weigh down too much with water, in my opinion. So I get the Royal Langnickel. These are the all medium brush, or all media brushes. These ones have a square edge. They're pretty new. I just bought these recently. You can get some with angles. You can get these tiny little ones. These are probably better. These are what I would usually use for watercolor because they're smaller, but they are still stiffer. I prefer brushes like that. But if you get an all media set of brushes, you can use them for literally everything. You don't have to use special brushes for special media. I know that there are some brushes that, as you get more experienced, if you find that you would rather use other brushes, then that's totally fine. You can get really nice brushes at Hobby Lobby. That's where I actually got these. These are only $8. This was the price. They actually were 40% off when I got them, so obviously I paid even less. I usually do that. I usually wait till they have sales. I'll check their website and their flyers frequently because of the cost of supplies can be very expensive. Another little hot tip for you. But yeah, all media brushes can be used with anything. Just make sure you clean them in between the media. I am terrible about that. And some of my brushes are in such a desperate need of cleaning because I've used them with oil painting and now they're really stiff and I have to start over on that whole collection. It's such a nightmare, but I cannot emphasize that enough. Clean your brushes. I'll probably be doing that later today. Moving on to another supply that I use very frequently, and that is the surfaces. And the number one thing that I would recommend is watercolor paper. You can get watercolor paper in all kinds of different formats. I have recently got this sketchbook. I'm actually in the process of doing sketchbook video with I'm not gonna show you everything, but yes, it is watercolor paper. In here it is very thick and sturdy and durable, and it's also got it's a decent size where I can just throw it into a bag if I'm traveling, if I wanted to take it. It's not huge, it's lightweight, and you don't have paper flying everywhere if that's the case. Also, I use this watercolor pad of paper. I think I get this on Amazon too. I'll link that below. It's the Canson watercolor cold press paper. These are 9x12 sheets. It's 140 pound, 300 GSM. It is very thick, very sturdy. It is actually what I use when I make my own sketchbooks, which I have one here. It's a bit smaller than the other one I have. I will say she's fallen apart. I used a vintage book cover. Actually, I have that video as well if you want to see how I did that. I'm also in the process of trying to find a better way to make sketchbooks because I hate the gluing process. It's so messy and it never stays right. I need to find a different way to do it. I think someone suggested trying a kettle stitch. I think I'm gonna try that. But yeah, you can paint on it, you can fold it, bend it, put it into sketchbooks, sew it. So watercolor paper is very versatile. You can use mixed media paper. If you can't find the right watercolor paper you don't like watercolor paper, you feel like it's too stiff, that's totally fine too. But I feel like watercolor paper you can use on all media. You do have to be careful if you're using oil paint on paper, but little trick. And also, my fourth supply that I would recommend is gesso. You can put this onto your watercolor paper and then go over that with the oil paint that you want to use in your sketchbook. So you can use your sketchbook for all of the media that you want to use. I also have a black one. I got this on clearance. Ooh, is this still good? It sounds fine. Doesn't sound chunky. I haven't even opened it, but I paid like $5 for it. I have another one, a different brand, but it was really chalky, so I'm hoping this one's not so bad. But yeah, gesso's great. You can use it to smooth surfaces. You can start over if you really hate what you have on your sketchbook and you don't want to waste the page. You can cover it. This gesso's a bit thinner. It usually takes a couple of coats of the white gesso if you're going over another painting or something like that, but it is your best friend. But yeah, gesso. And then when you are finished with your artwork, you need to seal it, especially if you're using, I would say, gouache. It can be a bit chalky and it's really hard sometimes, especially the Himi Gouache is water activated, so you can easily pick it up if you're using like a paint on varnish and things like that. So there are two different varnishes that I use. One is the Liquitex Basics. I love this stuff. It's really thin and it goes a long ways. So I think I've probably varnished like 10 or 12 paintings with this and I've barely used any of it. I don't know if you can even see that, but it's great sealant. I would recommend this for everything but water activated paint, not on watercolor and not on water activated gouache. The two gouaches that I showed you are not water activated, but the Himi Gouache I know is. I've had that issue before. So in that case, I would use a spray sealant. I am cheap and I just get Rust-Oleum. It doesn't matter that much. It's just a basic matte varnish. It sprays on at any angle. I really don't care about that because everything's just kind of above or like this, but it's great, it's fine. It's really not that expensive. I think it was like $5 something for this. Yeah, so I prefer matte sealants. You can use a semi-satin, semi-matte varnish. You can use a high gloss. It just depends on what you're varnishing. But things in my sketchbook, I do prefer to leave it as a matte varnish. I do find sometimes, especially in a sketchbook, if you're sealing it with anything that has any sort of satin or gloss, it will get sticky and stick the pages together, which is absolutely not what you want in a sketchbook. But again, it is completely up to you. Okay, so there's that. that's all the supplies that I have for beginners. If you have any recommendations as well, please leave it in the comments below. I'm actually really curious to see what other people recommend. I'm a self-taught artist. I did not go to college for this. This is everything that I learned in my own time through high school and middle school, and obviously that was not the most recent time, if we're being honest. Yeah, so I'm really curious to see what everybody else recommends for beginner supplies, where you would get them, maybe how much they cost. I would say I could probably get one of each of these. I say the brush, the gesso, the sealant, everything, keep it all under $50. There's quite a few pages in this paper pad as well. So you get a pretty good bang for your buck when you do that. Also, a little insider tip, if you go in January or in, I believe, July, to Michael's or Joann's, and I think Hobby Lobby does it at the same time. They do massive sales on surfaces, canvas, gesso panels, all of that stuff. They do typically 70% off. So sign up for the newsletters and anything that you think you might be able to find any of the discounts on. That's a huge, huge, huge hot tip for you. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.